This is Daniel, Burritos and Snow Cochrane, and I never in my life listened to a podcast until I heard about the Not Snowboarding podcast by Nate Mousson.
Welcome to the Not Snowboarding Podcast, a delightfully tasteful glimpse into the other side of snowboarding.
So it's funny, my phone's been blowing up all day. I've been getting messages like, "What the fuck, man? No podcast today?" Or, "You're slacking, dude. What's up with the TNSP? Hey, I didn't see a new podcast." So to date, I've been pretty consistent about publishing an episode every week on Sunday night. Here's what happened. To be completely honest, and in the spirit of full transparency, I just got lazy. Since the local mountain didn't have enough snow to reopen, I decided to go surfing over the weekend. And, as usual, I got physically destroyed. I ate multiple servings at the sandbar. That's where I drop in on a wave and lean too far forward. Instead of actually catching the wave, I just go straight down through the wave and through the water and slam into the sandbar, which creates the wave. And then the wave crashes down on top of me as well. In addition to that abuse, there's no chairlift or rope tow in the ocean, and the paddling really takes its toll on my shoulders quickly. I'm also pretty sure I broke my toe. It's definitely badly sprained at the very least. All that said, I caught one left, which is my heel side, for me kind of like the hard way to go. But anyways, that one left made the whole trip and the whole day worth it. So surfing, that was on Saturday, and then on Sunday, during the time that I usually produce and publish the podcast, I decided to do some more surfing. Except instead of riding my LibTech surfboard, I was surfing the couch. I actually watched 7 or 8 episodes of American Horror Story Season 3 on Netflix, back to back. I thought nobody will notice if I don't get this episode up tonight. Boy, was I wrong. Thanks for all of the texts, the emails, and even the one angry phone call. I'll continue to do my best to release an episode per week on Sunday night, but no guarantees. If the surf's up, if it dumps snow, or if a new season of American Horror Stories drop on Netflix, you may have to wait a day. Today's chat is with snowboard blogger Daniel's Burritos and Snow Cochrane. Daniel describes himself as a child of the 80s punk rock skate rat scene via Montgomery, Alabama. Daniel moved to Salt Lake City in 1996 and immediately fell in love with snowboarding. He wears many hats, and in addition to running burritosandsnow.net, we touch on his passion for music, marketing, vegetables, and yoga. It was particularly fun for me to be able to compare notes on his experiences growing up as a skateboarder in Alabama versus my childhood growing up in northern Montana. I almost want to just pick up where we left off the other day. We had a really good conversation, and then you texted me afterwards, and you were like, "Oh yeah, 2 other things, like I'm into yoga, kind of, and I've been a vegetarian for 22 years, and I don't want people to think that this is in any way a vegetarian podcast, but, oh, by the way, I happen to be a vegetarian, so that's going to come up from time to time, too."
Yeah.
And I didn't know that you were. I've seen a couple things that you've posted over the years that led me to think that you at least were concerned about eating organic food more often than not, but for whatever reason, I didn't pick up on the fact that you're a vegetarian. Maybe it's because you're a guy, because most guys aren't, from my experience.
It's one of those things, like I have people that I've known casually for years, like maybe work, friends at work and stuff, and they'll not know. It's just something I don't do it for other people, so I don't make a big deal about it, you know what I mean? And I'm sure you know those people, that have to tell you.
How do you know if somebody's a vegan?
Yeah,
because they'll tell you. And
exactly.
I'm vegan, and I try to fall into that too, but I think where I cross the line and where I speak more than I do actually verbally is on the internet. I'll find just interesting articles, scientific studies. There's this guy, Dr. Michael Greger. He runs a website called nutritionfacts.org, and his content is just amazing. He sifts through all of the studies that are out there, interprets them, and then puts them down into little 5 to 10 minute videos that somebody like me can understand and translates it to English. And just really, really interesting things. He's huge into turmeric and the anti-carcinogen capabilities of that, and the reductions in swelling with that spice. But that's the sort of stuff that I just am compelled to share on Facebook. So if you're my Facebook friend, you probably know that I'm a vegetarian. But there's, like you said, there's people that I work with day to day that don't have a clue. I'm not out there like making it awkward for them or running around with PETA stickers or anything.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, I mean, I do it for me, so, or I have my own reasons, and I honestly don't care one way or the other if anybody else is, obviously, in my opinion, it would be great if everyone was, but, if you're not, who cares,
How did that happen for you 22 years ago? That's a long time.
Um, it's a combination of just being a dumb teenager and then stubbornness. Growing up, as we talked about, I grew up in Alabama. That's why I sound like Forrest Gump. So I grew up in Alabama, and when I was at early teen, mid teen, before 20, I was born in 71. So mid to late 80s were my angry teenage years, and at that point in time in the South, like, you weren't a skateboard kid, you weren't a punk rock kid, especially in small town South. You consistently get your ass kicked. You were very much against the grain, and part of that was trying to do things that were against the grain. And of course, coming from the South, which is very like, we're going to go kill shit this weekend, part of that shock value was just, a handful of friends were just like, well, guess what? We're vegetarians. Isn't that shocking to you? And I did that and then just never stopped.
Gotcha. The South isn't very different than where I grew up in the North, in northern Montana. And I grew up hunting and fishing, and that Montana Nate would make fun of the vegan Nate. He would be the guy like putting a bacon joke out there or what have you. But I had a shirt from a wheel company called A1 Meats, and it said meat is murder. And I bought it almost out of what you just described, just like, I want to be the opposite of what everyone else around here is into. And I didn't even equate that to being vegetarian for some reason until I wore that shirt around and enough people asked me, what are you, some kind of vegetarian? And I was like, no, like, what do you think, I'm crazy? You can't live like that.
Well, it's funny that that you actually say that because, well, first of all, I remember A1 Meats, Jason Dill wrote for them, and they had their video was all no effect songs. Remember that?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh, yeah. I roll deep. Anyway, almost the exact same thing happened to me. I quit eating beef and pork, and I had a plan to phase out. I stopped eating beef and pork, and I still ate seafood and chicken, and I was gonna stop eating that. And I remember standing in probably Hardee's. Do you still have those back east?
Oh yeah.
Hardee's, like Carl's Jr.
Yep.
As a teenager, standing in Carl's Jr. to get like a chicken biscuit with the Smith's Meat is Murder shirt on, and kind of just had this moment where I was like, I kind of feel like an idiot. I'm standing in a line at Hardee's with the Meat is Murder t-shirt on, and like right then I was like, fuck it, I'm not eating meat anymore. So
Wow.
that was how well, like, I just left the line, and that was like right then is when I stopped.
Wow. And what were your parents' and family's reaction?
I was going through the whole thing. Like, every couple days was a different color hair, just, bad religion t-shirts. So, I mean, it was just another in a long list of disappointments for my mom. And my grandmother, she was very, very old school South. My mom's family's from South Carolina. Very old school South. Like, my grandmother didn't have much of an education. She worked at a ball bearing plant her entire life, and it was just something she couldn't even comprehend. Like, it was just incomprehensible to her. I would like go over to her house and she'd be like, I made chicken and dumplings. And I'd be like, well, I can't eat that. And she'd be like, well, just eat the dumplings. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, it's been cooked with the chicken. I can't eat that either. And she had no concept of it. No concept.
I found both experience with older people. Some who are a little bit more like enlightened souls, like kicking back in Florida on their, listening to Oprah or watching the Oprah channel and have had some exposure to it. And then there's the ones like my wife's grandma that were just kind of, this is the way it's always done. I've fed people for 80 years now. I've built these, huge meals for all these family events, and this is what you eat. Why would you offend me by not
Yeah,
eating my food?
it's funny. One of my good friends growing up, him and his wife got married in Puerto Rico because her whole family was from Puerto Rico. So they went down there, got married on the beach, that whole deal. So I went there. I was his best man, and her great grandmother was cooking for us, and he's vegetarian also. And I just remember her great grandmother telling us, she was like, she got so offended. We were like, we don't eat meat. And she told us straight up, she's like, you will die. Like, you have to have every food group. And that means beef, pork, and chicken. Like, those were food groups to her. And
Yes. Yes, that's so fun. And it's so funny for me, the people that elicit those strong responses. My dentist told me the same thing. And now every time there's like any little thing with my teeth, which have been impeccable most of the time, but if there is like a cavity or something, he's on it. Like, well, you're eating that vegan diet. And as far as I can tell, the studies show that, and he owns a farm too, by the way, and
yeah,
raises and slaughters he's like a hobby slaughter guy. Like, he gets excited about telling stories about killing his chickens and everything. But he swears that, I've got it. There's no way scientifically that you're getting all of the proteins. And I was like, well, actually, and I'm not one to ever have these like heated debates, but I'm like, the U.S. government and the FDA and all the government food approval boards pretty much say right here, and you can point them to the website, that you just have to eat diverse food groups. You just eat a bunch of different stuff.
right. And, for me, part of it, it's not, to an extent, there's a animal rights thing, but I also just think that the food that we as in people eat today is just so heavily processed and so many chemicals and so much crap in it. Ingredients with hyphens and numbers and X's and L's next to each other. That shit's not real, and I think that's a huge, huge problem with the health issues we have in this country. And eating vegetarian or vegan, I think, is a really good way, or organic, is a really good way to circumvent that. And maybe vegetarian's the laziest way, but it's still a way to circumvent that, So,
And
that's just my 2 cents.
And I like it. I agree. And you have to be careful. You say it's funny the lazy way. You can be just as lazy as a vegan, and you can eat Oreos are vegan.
Yeah.
So many potato chips are vegan. There's this tofurkey pizza that I love that is vegan, but if I eat those every day, I'm limited to just twice a week now. If I ate those every day, I would be like a fat ass. You can eat horribly on a vegan diet too, so you have to be careful. But that's super exciting. We don't want to beat that into the ground here, because I know that that's a controversial topic for some folks, but I love to kind of just bring some light to it at the same time, because for me, it's very much like what you said before. It's not something where I'm running around telling the whole world I'm vegan. That's kind of like the fuel to do the stuff that I want to do throughout the day. And it's like, I look at it as putting like the best fuel in your body. If you can go around eating the standard American diet, or like the drive-through diet, like you said with the Hardys, that's shitty fuel. That's low-grade shit.
Right.
Why don't you go get the high-grade stuff? And that's what I think of. And it really takes some getting used to. The raw leafy vegetables taste a little bit different and really don't taste good for a lot of people at first. But now I'm at a point where it's like, oh yeah, kale, like that's great. Slightly steamed, and all these things that as a kid, Brussels sprouts, I'm like excited for Brussels sprouts. I used to hate those as a kid.
Right. And, and it doesn't even have to be about being vegan or vegetarian. I mean, it's so crazy to me that we, as a culture, place so much value on expensive things. Like, we want an expensive car. We want an expensive house. We don't want the entry-level laptop. We want a MacBook. You know what I mean? Except for food. We want the cheapest shit that we can find. It's crazy. And that makes no sense to me. And that's the one thing that you should, and whether it's like organic grass-fed, really good beef, or it is kale. You should invest in spending money in quality food.
Yeah, you can pay now or you can pay later. So you pay now, it's preventative healthcare is how I look at it. And I can't tell you how many times I've gone to the Common Market, which is like the all-organic grocery store that has like a food bar that I eat off of 4 or 5 times a week and kind of like a little deli. Everything's organic. Everything's expensive as shit. And I've paid probably hundreds of $40 to $50 lunches just for me. And that's like lunch and maybe a little bit of food for later and like maybe some protein shake or something for later. But so many times I'm just like, fuck, I used to just worry about where can I get a $2 lunch, but that was the worst quality food. Now I'm paying up front, and sometimes it's like I really don't even have this money. But then I always come back to what you just said, is either pay now or pay later. Like, what quality of life do you want towards the end? Do you want to be laid up with all kinds of diabetes and all kinds of problems? No, I want to be going hard. I want to be doing kickflips until I'm 90. So I want good fuel.
Yeah, and I don't profess to be perfect. I mean, I just try to pay attention to what I eat, and I try to eat really well. But I'll call myself out. I will roll through the Del Taco drive-thru every once in a while and grab a burrito. That's just, you know what I mean? It's not about, I think we have also, and it's not just about food. We just have this weird perception in this country that we have to be, if we espouse something, like if we're, well, just say vegetarian because that's where, or good food, not even vegetarian. If we talk about good food, we have to always do that. And it's not about that. It's just trying to make the effort more often than not.
Yeah, and that's where it goes back to when I was talking about that old me that would make fun of the current me. I see that person in a lot of people when I'm rolling through the Taco Bell drive-thru, getting 2 fresco bean burritos, and I've got a car full of skate rats, and I go, oh shit, they put cheese on my burritos. And then I'm like, okay, well, I'm starving. We already got our order, and I'll just like get as much of it off as we can and take one bite. And there's like a group full of kids in that car waiting to go, oh, you're not vegan anymore.
Right.
It's over. You're done. Let's go eat some steak. And it's like, no, it's not about that. I'm just trying to do better. I'm not trying to be perfect.
Yeah, for sure.
So funny. So is that how Burritos and Snow came about? Your affinity for burritos?
Oh yeah, those are the things I'm into: burritos and snow. So yeah, I love me a good burrito, and people always ask. That's a lot of times that's the segue into how people find out that I'm vegetarian, because they'll ask me what kind of burrito I get, and I'll just be like, oh, a bean burrito with sour cream and cheese, and a little salsa or blah 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 blah, and they're like, well, you don't get this, and I'm like, oh, well, I'm vegetarian, and that's why I don't get that. So that's actually funnily enough, the way a lot of people find out is through the burritos I choose to eat.
Yeah, I can definitely see that for sure. So you're like this disappointing to your family, 18-year-old kid skateboarding in Alabama. How do you end up a snowboard blogger in Utah?
Well, my dad moved out here. My parents divorced when I was real young. Well, my dad moved out here in the I would say probably mid-'80s. He moved out to Utah with a girl that he was dating at the time. She got a grant here at the University of Utah. He moved out here with her. I think I came out here for the first time the year between 8th and 9th grade. I came out here. And so later on in life, I was 23, married, had a 3-year-old, roughly 2 or 3-year-old. And both me and my ex-wife, we were just like, you know what? If we don't get out of Alabama now, we won't get out. You know what I mean? Because we were just kind of that, like, it was to the point of, okay, buy a house and give up. Not give up, but just stay, or leave and try something different. And Salt Lake City was a place that we had both been, a couple times. And I was like, well, let's go to Salt Lake City for a couple years, kind of, get out of Alabama, and then we'll decide what we want to do. And that friend I talked about earlier, his name's Steve, that got married in Puerto Rico. He lives in Brooklyn now. At the time, he lived in the Bay Area. So our plan was to kind of touch down in Salt Lake a couple years, get our feet under us, and then move to the Bay Area. But as most people will tell you, no one really moves to Salt Lake for 2 years. It's a black hole. It's just an amazing place, despite the kind of the things you hear when you don't live here. It's a great place, despite the stereotypes, and just never left.
So, and before you moved there, you had yet to snowboard, is that right?
Right. I never snowboarded. I knew moving here I would snowboard because I had skateboarded forever. And so I knew I would snowboard, but I never had. I had skied one time at Alta, ironically enough. I'd skied one time, and that was at Alta. But moving out here at like 20, I think I was 20, about 25, I knew I would, just start snowboarding.
So you learned to snowboard at 25, but since you were kind of a lifetime skateboarder, it was a very easy transition for you?
Yeah, it was real easy. I mean, I was not good by any means, but I could get like first day at Brighton, I could get like top to bottom on like one of the easier lifts, not the bunny hill, but an easier lift. I could get top to bottom. I kind of figured out without falling, and I kind of figured out the mechanics of linking my turns in the first day.
And now you're up to what? How many days on snow this year?
This year we had it varies from year to year, and this year was one of those years where Brighton is open now. They've been open for a couple days. Literally 10 days ago, there was almost no snow up there. And that happens sometimes where it's like a flick of the switch. So far this year, I think I have only 4 days. I hiked 3 days, and I have 1 day at Brighton.
That's four.
Go ahead.
Oh, that's 4 more days than I have, man. I'm jealous.
Yeah, I get 100 pretty easy, and then it depends on like the year. Brighton always closes around the end of April, regardless of how much snow is left, because they have a lease with the Forest Service. But Snowbird will go as long as they can, and they sell a pass that starts in April. It's only a few $100, and it's just April until whenever they close. So if it's a really good year, that can be like June, July. And so I'll buy that pass and continue to ride. If not, I'll just hike and start skateboarding and stuff.
Right. So we were chatting the other day, and you said something that kind of blew my mind, but it's something else that you're really passionate about. So I guess I can understand. But you said that if you had to pick between music and snowboarding, you would pick music. Why? Why is that?
Oh, hands down. Hands down. I don't know why. I mean, music's always been there. I mean, I remember from the time I was little, like my mom was into music when she was younger, but my dad has always been super, super, super into music. He's very into music, kind of in the same way that I am. And yeah, I just I don't know why. I just have a connection with music. Like I like to just listen to music. I enjoy finding new bands. Discovering a new band that you think is super sick is the same as learning a new trick on my skateboard or snowboard to me. I mean,
Wow.
it's just as exciting. So, and I still love to go to like shows. I go to shows pretty consistently, and yeah, it's just fun.
I missed out on the whole going to shows thing. And again, it's funny, the guys back at the shop make fun of me every time I say a back in Montana story, but I'm going to drop one here. And they've been playing the podcast at the shop at Pitcrew in Frederick, Maryland, the local snowboard shop that I used to go to. So if they're like when I work there and they're playing drinking games while we're working, they're probably drinking right now as they're hearing my back in Montana story. But it was so small in Montana that we didn't have access to much music. It was like you went to the local drugstore and picked a tape based on how cool the jacket looked.
Right.
And then 2, we definitely didn't have access to going to any sort of show. So my first concert was the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band when they came and played at my local college. But it wasn't nice at that time because I thought that they weren't cool at that time. I was a kid. I was trying to be a skateboard kid. And I was like, no, I don't want to go see that. But I remember my mom and my dad were like, you should. You're going to appreciate this someday. And they were right. I do. I'm stoked that we did. But it was like 30 people in a college classroom with them up front, kind of where the teacher's desk would be, and then the 30 people sitting in the student's desk, and it was just really casual. So that was my first impression of a concert. Then I moved out to, actually, I visited my aunt in Washington, D.C., and just kind of keeping up with the theme of me revealing funny and embarrassing things about myself on the podcast here. She got tickets for the New Kids on the Block at like one of these big centers. And yeah, like this was going to be this huge surprise. There was my cousin Tona was there, and I think she was more psyched than I was because they were kind of a boy band, right? But I didn't want to disappoint them, so I kind of feigned, some level of like, oh, cool. And really, I'm thinking like, really, I've got to do this? I just remember it was my first experience seeing the glow sticks, and they were everywhere. And they were like $14 for one of these glow sticks. And people, it was kind of like a show of how much money you had, like how many glow sticks you could buy, I guess. I don't know. So those are my concert experiences. And beyond that, it's pretty much been Slayer and a couple of local bands that I really like Old Indian.
The first concert I remember going to, I was real young, but it was my mom took me to John Denver.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I saw John Denver. I barely remember it. And then, not many for a long time, but I grew up in a college town. So that helped a lot, Auburn, Alabama. So that helped a lot. We kind of talked about this earlier, that I would hear, at the time, all these frat houses were just a block away from us. On this row, and now they're all hotels, and they've moved the frat houses outside of town and everything. But I would hear this music at night in these bands, and this is early 80s, and then as I got a little bit older into like junior high school and high school and started discovering these bands, I would like remember, it's like, oh, I've heard this stuff before, and it would be like bands that were regional or local, like REM and the B-52s, that were playing at these frat parties. But, I had no idea who they were at the time, but I could hear them playing. And then as I got older, I would discover and be like, oh, man, that's rad. I know who these guys are. It was kind of crazy. So I think being in a college town helps a lot. Atlanta is a pretty big place, and that was only a couple hours away. So we used to always go to shows there.
Is there any type of music that you don't like?
I'm not into like what would be like top 40 country, whatever the popular country stuff is. It's generally just kind of meh kind of music. I don't really want to, at 40 plus years old, I don't need to hear songs about drinking and fishing. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't really relate to that. But yeah, I mean, and then I just probably general, even probably pop music, I'm not super into. But
you don't have the new Taylor Swift on your phone?
I do not. Well, she's not on Spotify, so I can't even listen to it because I don't do anything but Spotify.
Is that like a controversy or something? I'm on a total news diet. Like if I get news, it's off of Facebook usually. So I don't know.
She recently pulled her music off of Spotify because she doesn't think that Spotify pays her enough. But it's funny because, all these super indie bands don't have a problem with what Spotify's paying them because they enjoy the exposure. They don't have to go on tour with God knows how many thousands of dollars that they invest per show, for a Taylor Swift show. God knows how many dancers and backing vocals, and all these kind of people, they don't have to worry about that. So, yeah, she thinks Spotify doesn't pay enough. And actually, from what I hear, Spotify doesn't pay very much. But I think it pays off in the fact that I could discover bands on Spotify, and when they come around Salt Lake City, I pay money to go see them.
Yeah, good exposure. I'm so naive. I didn't realize that they were paid at all from Spotify. And are they paid from Pandora, do you know?
I don't know about Pandora. I don't know how. I mean, I haven't listened to Pandora for years. I'm sure they're paid in some way, but Spotify is a little different because you can choose to stream whatever you want to. And so, whereas Pandora just kind of plays what it wants to play. So,
Yeah, I feel like I hear the same kind of like 3 or 4 songs again and again on Pandora.
yeah, yeah. And actually, Billboard, even though they're pretty irrelevant, actually announced this week, I saw it, I think, on some internet blog, that Billboard is going to start factoring in streaming into their like top 40s algorithms as far as like what the number one song is. It just won't be radio play and stuff like that. It'll also be how many times people have streamed it.
It's so interesting how behind the times some of those old rating systems, like the Nielsen system for TV, I got the envelope at my house, I think 2 years ago, and I think it had like $7 in it. And it was like Nielsen Radio. And it had like this little checkbox, like in between these hours, check this box and write in what radio show you listen to. And at the time, I was on podcasts mostly. I can't remember the last time I turned on the radio, so it was really easy for me. I just wrote in little notes about like different podcasts that I listened to, and took the $7 and sent it back.
Yeah, it's lots of those things, not just like Nielsen and everything. I mean, there's such big giant machines, and whether that's like corporate broadcasting or Warner Brothers Music or whatever. I mean, it takes so much for them to shift their paradigm. You know what I mean? And if, they get us wrong, it can ruin them. So, I mean, I understand how they're conservative about things, but also at the same time, it's kind of like they're sinking their own ship,
Yeah, if they don't make some change, they're just kind of dying on the vine at the same time as people are moving to these new models like Spotify, or even, I'll look up specifically what I want on YouTube lots of times and just listen to one song there. The ads have gotten a little bit worse lately. They're a little annoying, but
yeah,
you can find what you want just kind of a la carte for anything, whether it's music or if you want to know how to fix something, or if you're having some sort of problem, it's all at your fingertips now. And those old kind of television networks that used to control everything. And I think back to even when I was a kid, and again, back in Montana, everybody at Pitcrew drink. I had 3 channels, and one of them was WGN coming out of Chicago, and I don't know where the other 2 were, but that was it. So
right.
If you were on TV, that was a big deal. Now I know people on TV, and it's not a big deal.
Right.
There's so many channels. So fun.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's funny how the people complaining about not making enough money are the people who are already making more money than anybody else.
Exactly.
So that kind of has to. I would hope it would make anyone question if the validity of that statement.
Well, you hit a high water mark. It's like a good business adage that I've been told many, many times in the retail world. A good year can make you, and a good year can break you. So if you think that every year is going to be a $3 million year, if you're selling snowboards during that exponential growth curve, right in the sweet spot in the late 90s, early 2000s, and you're having these great years, and you're spending and not saving any of that money and not reinvesting it back into the shop, then all of a sudden, when it's a little bit leaner, like it is now, and your whole model's off of those $3 million years, well, you're done. You're out of business. That's not sustainable.
Right. Or if, in some instances there have been a couple, independent, in quotation mark, core shops lately that have closed, and some, not all, some of those I think have been guilty of shooting themselves in the foot. I mean, the 2 most successful shops here in Salt Lake City have been around for almost roughly 30 years each, and that's Salty Peaks and Milo, and they're both in amazing places, but at the same time they're dingy and dark and damp, and they're still like crammed full of product. They don't have like amazing hardwood floors and immaculate, huge floor to ceiling windows to show off everything. I mean, you have to play it safe. And
right.
if you're a business like that, and
and
if you have a good year, you just consider that lucky and you continue on.
Yeah, and just to be clear, you're not saying that in a negative way. You're saying that in they're a core shop, they're in there on the front lines, they're getting it done, and when they have that good year, they're not leveling up, they're just continuing to reinvest in their business as opposed to, like you said, buying the shiny new thing.
Right.
Let's just kind of stay the course here.
Right.
That way we can ride out the good times, we can ride out the bad times.
Exactly.
So. And you'll see that the new shop that'll pop up that'll give them a hard time for a couple of years right next to them is going to be the shiny shop with amazing merchandising, and they don't have 2 and 3 years of leftover boot inventory and binding inventory taking up space that's going to crunch on their retail space. So they're able to do that beautiful look for a little while, but they come and go.
Right. And there's another shop here in town that has a couple stores, and they're named Blindside, and it's a pretty cool shop too. And it's it's definitely like one of the shops you consider like one of the big 3 or 4 shops in Salt Lake. But it's a little more skateboardy. Like when I think of Blindside, I think they're the more skateboard shop, But they of course sell a lot of snow gear too, and they opened one back in the day. It's been quite a while now, but it was huge and it was super boutique. It was really nice, like exceptionally nice. Had a mini ramp in there and all that kind of stuff, and like it was great when things were great, but when things got shitty, they had to get out of there and move to another place. And then eventually they moved like a couple blocks down the road into a strip mall, to a more like traditional style shop, just a shop, which is good. I'm glad they held on because they're one of the rad shops in town, and I'm glad they were able to like kind of right the ship, but they almost, shot themselves in the foot.
You mentioned they had a mini ramp in there, and that kind of got me thinking. You're 42 years old. How much skateboarding do you do still?
It's real funny. Salt Lake is, skateboarding for me was completely different than snowboarding. For me, skateboarding growing up was all about hanging out with my friends. I never worried, well, I'm not going to say never. That's too absolute. I wasn't caught up in like, I had to learn pressure flips or I had to learn this, it was more about being fun. I was never great at skateboarding.
Did you do the whole baggy pants thing?
Oh yeah.
Blind jeans?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I was even like before, and I'm sure you were, I don't know if you want to say guilty, but I'm sure you've done this too, like before there were blind jeans, like going to the thrift store and buying like size 44 pants, because that's the only way you could get big pants.
Well,
and then you would like cinch the belt up and have all this extra denim at your waist.
Yeah, I couldn't afford blind jeans because they were $80. So
yeah,
my mom would give me $25 for back to school shopping and send me down to the thrift store on bag day. She would make sure that I went on bag day. Everything you could fit in a bag, you could get for like $10 or $20, and I would fill up a couple bags, and that would be it, back to school shopping. But it was exactly like you said. You'd get a belt, and then you'd have all this extra material, and then we'd take it over to my buddy's sister, and she would do her best to cut a bunch of it out to make it so you could actually function without this huge kind of just saggy thing in your crotch.
Yeah, so yeah, I had all that. That whole thing. I mean, I was into the scene of it, you know what I mean? But I wasn't worried about being like the greatest skater in town, you know what I mean? And but so it was all about hanging out with my friends. So when I moved to Salt Lake, I didn't know anyone really. And I was married and had a kid, and it was harder to get out. And I would skate off and on, but gradually over time, I didn't know anyone that skated. So I skated a little bit less and less. The weather here in town, this is obviously before skate parks were a thing too. Now there's skate parks everywhere in Salt Lake, but this is, so winter would come, so you couldn't skate for like 6 months anyway. And so I just kind of fell out of it. And then probably about 6 or 7 years ago, I on Go Skateboarding Day, I went and bought a complete, just got back on the board again, and obviously I'm really bad now. I was never great to begin with, but um, I get out, I do the snowboard skateboarder kind of style. I skateboard in the summer, put it away when the snow comes, and don't skate for 6 months, and then take the first 2 or 3 months of summer trying to get everything back, and then by the time that happens, it's getting close to snowboarding season again, so I don't want to get hurt, But yeah, I
Right.
get around and go to the skate parks and push around and do my no slides, board slides, 50/50s, 5/0s, kind of super basic, but have fun.
Yeah, skateboarding's not like riding a bike. You don't just jump on it after a couple years and everything clicks just the way it used to be. There's definitely that little warm-up period, and that's kind of where I'm at in a lot of ways too. It's usually not about learning a new trick. It's about relearning an old trick.
Yeah. And it is funny though, like, and I'm sure you have this too, and most people do, like you have that one thing though. And for me, it was always um, no slides for whatever reason. Like I can get back on a board after months and I will have like the shakiest, crappiest ollies. It'll take me weeks to land a kickflip, but I'll front no slide or no slide any rail in the like immediately.
That's
That
right.
was my one thing. I don't know why that was the thing that clicked with me, but that's it.
Yeah, for me it's
So
nollie heel flips. That's my favorite trick in the world. It just pops just right, comes right up to my feet. I'm not saying that I land it every time, but you give me 3 tries and I'll land a really good one for sure.
yeah,
Did
yeah,
you did you skate transition when you were young at all? Any mini ramps or anything like that?
a little bit, but not very much. I had one friend that had a mini ramp. We'd skate over there a little bit, but my heyday in skating was late 80s to like early mid 90s, and that was the vert is dead kind of era.
Right.
And so it was, and plus it was Alabama, so it wasn't like there was a lot of ramps, to get, or we get a quarter pipe here and there, but not really minis. I can give you a few lip tricks, maybe get a front side ollie every once in a while if I'm feeling good, but mostly it's just like ledges, curbs. That's my thing.
Yeah.
Flat bars.
I found I came up skateboarding during that same era, and my focus was purely on street. So it was how many flip tricks. I mean, that was just the most mind-blowing thing to me. Ollies weren't even cool. If you're just doing an ollie, that was like, it better be function. You're going up a curb as you're skating down the street or something. But it was everything had to flip the board. That was what was really cool and really in. And like you said, no slides, any slide but a board slide
Right.
was really cool, if it's on the nose or tail. But I didn't have access to any transition. I didn't skate any transition until I was about 18 or 19. And it was really humbling for me to be in an area where everybody else my age or even younger was really, really good at skating transition, or at least had the basics. And
Yeah.
here I am, like a young man getting coached on how to drop in.
Well, it's funny because I mean that era of transition, where transition wasn't cool, or when there was the death divert, is so evident even when you watch like the X Games, and you know how they have that like park kind of thing now that's all like cement and tranny and stuff,
Yeah.
and it's like the guys that are in it are either 14 or 35. There's a whole generation that's not even in it. You know what I mean?
Or even
That are
older, even into their
right, right.
40s.
Yeah, it's like Chris Miller and Kern Caples. you know?
So funny, so true. So just going back to music real quick, there was one other thing we were talking about the other day, and I asked you, hey, do you ride with music? You said, yes, absolutely, all the time. And tell me a little bit about how you kind of formulate what music you ride to.
um, a lot of times I'll just it's really crazy. I mean, sometimes I will hear a song, and this is how I know a song is like I really like a song. Like the first time I hear a song is I'll imagine like how you could make a snowboard edit to it, like a part or whatever, and that definitely goes on the playlist, the next winter. Every year I make a new playlist. And sometimes I just like right now, I made one a couple weeks ago for the winter, and a lot of it was just I dumped a bunch of songs on a bunch of albums and stuff from bands that I like, and then as the winter kind of comes and goes, I'll add. Sometimes I'll just add a few songs, or and um, but yeah, it's generally the stuff I snowboard to will be. Stuff that I feel like has good flow. Like I have the Matson too. I don't know if you know who they are, but like they're like two brothers, and their dad is like some music instructor genius at like UC Santa Barbara, and they're just like one guy plays drums, the other guy plays guitar, and it's all instrumental stuff. And I just like the way that flows. Like I can just flow like my snowboarding and flow. I usually don't listen to too much hard stuff, even though I do enjoy some like kind of still old school kind of hard punk or hard metal stuff. I don't listen to that very often when I'm snowboarding because I like to have a flow, and I like stuff that's kind of down tempo and has a flow to it, whether that's like electronic or just kind of like indie rock kind of stuff.
Do you find that to be consistent regardless of the terrain you're riding, or just like a picture perfect, kind of quiet, still powder day? Do you go for a different type of music?
I definitely, on a PAL day, I usually go for a lot slower music, because like in my head when I picture powder edits, and even it's this way in videos, the film is usually slowed down, so I picture stuff slowed down in my head, so I want like a slower music. Um, Even though they're not new or indie, like Pink Floyd is a perfect example. Some of their like long, drawn out instrumental, slow stuff, that is that's something that's real good for like a PAL day, and yeah,
Dark Side of the
geez.
Moon is my go-to for a pow day.
Yeah, like
Back when I
I,
used to listen to music, I had to quit. I had a horrible experience once.
yeah, yeah, we talked about that. It's different, and it is weird. Like can't, I don't skateboard to music. I don't, and I think part of that is because actually I have a guy that is a friend of mine, kind of a casual friend. His name's Lee. He owns a shop in Fort Walton Beach, Florida, called Plus, and that's the shop we used to kind of represent in Alabama, even though it was down in Florida because we didn't have a local shop. And he ended up buying that shop, and now he's the owner of it. Well, he came out um, and spent some time with me one time, and he had a snowboard and stuff because he, just even through skateboarding had connections and stuff, and he brought a snowboard out. We all went snowboarding and stuff, and he had never seen a snowboard video, and we watched it, and the very first comment he had was like, "Hey, it's weird. You can't hear them snowboarding."
Right.
And I was like, you know what? That is weird. I've never thought about that. Like, in a skate video, you hear the skating. And so I want to hear that when I skate, so I don't listen to music. But when I snowboard, you don't hear snowboarding in the video. And so you hear the music. And so it doesn't bother me to have music playing when I snowboard.
That's funny. You just reminded me of when I was a kid and I would queue up the VHS and put my skate video in, and then put my little boombox and put it on record right next to it, and put my mixtapes together that I would listen to like driving around or whoever on the Walkman or whatever, but they would all have the skate noises in them. And then as I'm listening to the music, I'm visualizing the part. So
Yeah.
there are so many songs. My friend Andy and I can call him up and play a song on the radio, and he'll be like, "Oh, Edward De Vera, Mad Circle video." Or the one that we watched nonstop was Useless Wooden Toys. I could play a song from him.
Yeah.
Anywhere from that, he'd be like, "Oh, Andy Howell."
Right.
He would know it.
Yeah.
And he would know what trick. He's like boy genius with that shit.
Yeah, I like to play Name the Part too. And I was actually proud of myself. I'll even brag. Why not? I was proud of myself the other day. I stumped Trev Brady, who's the guy that kind of the manager at Milo Sport. When I was in there just kind of hanging out, and um, a song by Blind Pilot came on, and I was just immediately, I was like, name the part, and he was like, I have no idea. I'm like, Gus Engle, cool story. I'm like, come on, you know. So old guys still have it sometimes.
Sometimes. But what's that movie about white man can't jump? The sun even shines on a dog's ass sometimes.
Yeah, every once in a while.
So how did you get into yoga? I'm super interested about that. That's, again, being a guy and a vegetarian and into yoga. That's like two strikes, man.
Yeah, I know. Just like you were saying, like 18-year-old self would laugh at you. Like, yeah, 18-year-old self would beat my ass. But you know, it's yoga's a very interesting thing, and what most people don't know about yoga is that the actual practice of yoga, of like, you know, bending and contorting and everything, um, is just such a small aspect of yoga. There's more than that to yoga. It's a mindset and like how you view the world and stuff like that. And actually, the physical aspect of yoga is called asana. That's the practice of doing yoga. And but yoga is also, just like I said, like, you know, your acceptance of things, how you view things, how you interact with others, and how you come to understand the world. And it's funny, like, all of that kind of stuff was stuff I already did. The only thing I didn't do was the actual physical practice of yoga. And so a few years back, um, I started having this numbness in my leg. And I thought it was I had an old knee surgery from an old skateboard injury that had a lot of scar tissue around it, because this is like back in the 80s when I had this surgery, which is, you know, might as well just have been the Civil War at that point. You know, they just basically like opened you up and hacked at you, you know. So I had all this scar tissue, and the scar tissue was cutting off my blood flow, and I had all these jacked up, like, you know how like old people get these varicose veins and stuff. Well, I had that because I had all this scar tissue around my veins, and it was messing up my blood flow. And I thought that's why was having all this numbness in my legs. And I went to a doctor, and he agreed. And I went into a surgery, and they basically just stripped out all these veins in my legs, worked on that scar tissue and everything. And I was good to go. I waited till after the snowboard season to get that done. My numbness kind of went away. I was good to go. Started snowboarding again that next fall. No more than a month or so in, here comes that numbness in my leg again. I couldn't. And it just wasn't like numbness. It was like pain. Like, just it was. It was mostly in like my hamstring area. It felt like I had like a basketball in my hamstring, and there was nothing you could do. You couldn't like massage it out. You couldn't do anything. So I went back to my doctor, and he's like, well, maybe you have a back injury. And I'm like, well, I don't have any back pain. So I went to a back guy anyway, and he's like, oh yeah, you're all jacked up, you know. And so it was just like, it was all nerve pain, that was like the sciatic nerve that is in your back, but it gives you pain in your leg. And for some reason, I never felt the back pain, but I just kind of went right to the nerve pain. So I went in and had a surgery, and it's the kind where you stay awake. They put a hole in your spine, put this needle in your spine, inject you with steroids, and that kind of helps bring that disc back under control. And that worked for me. And if that didn't work, I would have more aggressive surgery, but that kind of worked for me. It helped me get everything back under control. And I had a friend of mine at the time who was really into yoga. His name's Ryan Turley. He doesn't live here anymore. He used to be the Tech 9 rep, and now he's like a super big wig at Arbor. I'm not sure what he does. He's like global, you know. But super rad dude, like grow your own food, super like yoga guy. And he was like, man, you need to get into yoga. It would help you out so much. And it was funny because I was like, well, as soon as my back stops hurting, I'll get into yoga. And what I didn't understand, he was just like, well, if you get into yoga, your back will stop hurting.
Yeah.
And then my girlfriend Stacy, when we met, she was super into it, And she was like, you need to go. And I was like, okay, I went. And it just made such a difference. And it was, and it was like the philosophical side I was already like full on into, and so it just kind of had to do like the physical side of it. And I'm super into it. Like it's fun. It's very much to me, I approach it in a skateboarding and snowboarding mentality. Like it's when you first start doing it, things are really hard. And the more you do it, hard things become easy and you progress in the way you do things. You might first do, a move that's just you bending a certain way. And then you progress to where not only do you bend that way, but you take one leg off the ground. And then it's like, okay, then you take a leg and a foot off the ground. And to me, that's no different than like, okay, from a ollie, you go to kickflip. And from kickflip, you go to like front side flip and from, or 360 flip. And so I kind of approached it with that kind of progression and I just got super into it, and like vegetarianism, it's something I do for me. So
Right.
I'm not that kind of person that posts pictures of me on Instagram doing yoga.
You might,
I
I don't
just,
know,
it's a,
you might have a separate Instagram account that you're not telling us about.
no, I don't.
For me,
um,
what I found with yoga is that it makes everything better. Like I can just move in the world like I'm 18. I can go and skate and I'm limber and I'm quick and it slows time down a little bit too and makes it much easier for you to get into the zone.
yeah,
So regardless of what aspect of life, if it's sitting behind a desk for 8 hours, if I've done yoga for an hour before that, or if I'm going to do it an hour after that, that day is better. If I'm going skateboarding, I'm landing more tricks. I'm not falling. It just makes everything better. And never
yeah,
mind the mindfulness side of it. My favorite part of a yoga class is the very end, where most yoga classes you'll lay in corpse pose, right?
yeah,
And you'll just lay there. And it's probably only, depending on the teacher, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. But you're in basically a meditative state, and it feels like forever. And I shouldn't hate it. I shouldn't have any attachment to it. I should just be like okay with it. But I hate it when they start to bring up the lights or say, okay, now bring awareness to your toes. And I'm like, no, I want to stay here forever.
right. It's and I go to the studio I go to is it's full on like super hippie yoga. Like there is chanting, there is like saying om, there is like the fucking bowls that the
Ding.
singing bowls and all that kind of stuff. And it's cool. It's cool. It might not be for everyone, but I'm all in. I'm down with it, and I would encourage anyone, and it's not an old man thing. All the kids at Milo, well, I'm not gonna say all, that's too extreme, but there's a large group of the young kids at Milo they get up at 6 in the morning and they go to yoga a couple days a week, and it makes a difference
That's
for
awesome.
sure.
There's hope for the future.
Yeah, for sure.
It's too funny. Yeah, the a lot of the chanting and the namaste and that sort of thing was very hard for me to swallow at first. I just thought that was like cultish at first. But then once you start to talk to them and understand where it's coming from and especially what those different things mean, they're all about peace or like I see the God in you, or it's like okay, that's not really trying to get me to buy into any weird cult thing. I guess I can understand where that's coming from.
Right. Yeah, and it's an interesting thing. The studio I go to, I mean, they before every session, like when we're in there sitting down, there's usually like a message or the instructor will tell a story, and it'll be about these gods from like the Hindu pantheon, of like Ganesh and all that kind of stuff. But like they'll tell these stories about these gods and these lessons and everything. But the couple that own the studio are devout Christians, and
Oh wow.
it's not that means you're not a Christian. It's just that different cultures and different beliefs, they may have different stories, and yeah, it might be an elephant in their belief system, but that's really no different than like the story of Abraham in the Christian faith. You know what I mean? And so it's just an acceptance that for some reason, you know, um, people from all over the world have this traditional story across various faiths of, a great cataclysm, whether that's a flood or a purging of fire, or but there's that one story, and it's just kind of like a central theme, and so they recognize that and they talk about it.
Wow, that's fascinating. I would never guess that a Christian couple would own a yoga studio, but I guess it's not that out of the realm either. It's just that I was raised in a Christian church, and yoga was like on the other side. It was over there with skateboarding and
Yeah.
everything else. Like that's the bad shit. You stay away from that. Which it's funny. I actually have that church to thank for getting me into skateboarding, because one Sunday when my mom was dragging me to church as a young kid, there were two kids skateboarding across the street and down a few houses. And this is like early 80s, maybe 85, somewhere in there. And I got out of the car slower than normal. I just sat there and watched them. I didn't really know exactly what it was, but I knew it was fucking awesome. And I knew somehow that I would be doing it at some point. My mom had to drag me into church that day.
Yeah, the way I got into skateboarding is it's really weird, because it is definitely like one of those things where it makes you realize the smallest of decisions can affect your life forever, and in the craziest ways. The way I got into skateboarding was, I think it was my ninth grade year. And it was that, how it's like that first day of school and you walk into, I even know, like specifically it was geometry class. So I walk into geometry class, and you know how you have to make that decision of where you're going to sit. And I was kind of full on that kind of normal Southern kid. I played, well, not quite normal. I did play soccer, which was weird in the South in the 80s. But, I played football. I was just kind of you're just kind of run of the mill, like popular junior high school kid, football, ran track, that kind of stuff. Normal, listen to hair metal, um, and I walked into geometry class, and there was a group of people I recognized, and they were kind of like some football players and some like cheerleader types. And there was a kid that sat on the other side of the room. His name was Jeff. And I didn't know him super well, but he was good friends with one of my best friends. And I went over there and sat with him. I chose to sat over there with him. And he lived in one of these planned communities outside of town, where my best friend, whose name was Michael, also lived. That's how they knew each other. Well, over that summer, this other kid named Jeff had moved in from California, and he was a skate rat. And so kind of some of the kids out there in that planned community had made friends with him and kind of started skateboarding. And this guy I went to sit down with was one of those. And I sat down with him, and he had a Thrasher magazine. And that was it. Like, he showed me this magazine. I was like, oh, this is cool, whatever. And I kind of looked at it, and I kind of hung out with him and went skateboarding. And that was it. Like, there would probably have been no other instance in my social circle that I would have been exposed to something like that. And it would have been as simple as if I had like gone to the left and sat with that other group. Like, I probably would have never been exposed to that.
You'd be like a stockbroker or something.
Yeah, be like a stockbroker, fucking lame, and living in some suburb still in Alabama, and like, given up at 23 and just been like, football coach dad, and lived through my kids and all that kind of bullshit.
It's amazing the power that the Thrasher magazine had. A very similar, it's almost like you fell in love with it as a kid, because it was a magazine for me that I didn't want my mom to see, and that made me want it that much more. My mom was very conservative Christian, and if she saw some of the stuff in Thrasher, it would be gone. When I got the Metallica, my first CD ever was the Metallica Black Album, and I was upstairs just cranking it, listened to like 2 songs, and my mom comes upstairs. I'm like, oh shit. She opens the jacket and reads the lines. Exit light, enter night, what do you think that means? And then cracks it over her knee. And I was like, I didn't even get to listen to the whole thing. That was like $24 to buy a CD, and it came in a big fucking case back then. That was like a lot of money. So anything like Thrasher or anything like that, it was kind of bad, but it just made you want to check it out that much more, as a kid.
Yeah, I was very lucky in that sense. My mom was she's very straight laced, very don't rock the boat, head down, do your duty, kind of, you know what I mean. And I would imagine as a single mom with you got a kid, that pretty much has to be your mentality anyway. That's not a knock on her. I mean, she went through some incredibly hard stuff, raising me on her own and everything, but she was definitely weirded out. She was into the whole Tipper Gore thing. I know she had Tipper Gore books. She probably thought at any moment I was going to kill her in her sleep.
For all of our younger listeners, could you elaborate on the Tipper Gore thing a little bit?
Yeah, Tipper Gore. Tipper Gore was, or is still, she's Al Gore's wife, and Tennessee. They're from Tennessee. She's very conservative. She started this thing called the PMRC, Parents Music Resource Center, which is basically responsible for the labelings you see nowadays of explicit lyrics, explicit content. Pretty much as the story goes, she bought her adolescent child Prince's "When Doves Cry" album, and the song "Darling Nikki" is on it, and it references Darling Nikki masturbating and that kind of stuff, and she freaked out. And she was a senator's wife, and they got to have something to do. And yeah, she was on a fucking witch hunt. And this was the '80s, where they thought Judas Priest, albums backwards were making people kill people and making people wanted to worship the devil, which it's just ridiculous. But yeah, my mom was totally into that, And the irony of the fact was that, she was worried about this stuff, but at the time, I was listening to the most positive. I was into Minor Threat, Youth of Today, those kind of bands, Gorilla Biscuits, very, they were hardcore, but they're very positive bands. You know what I mean? But all my mom heard was a lot of noise and the F word here and there.
Right.
She's like, I don't know about this song, and of course, if she took the chance to read the lyrics, she probably would have supported it if it was country music, But yeah, so, but she never, to her credit, she never forbid anything. She let me go my own path, even though she didn't necessarily agree with it. She never said, you can't do this, you can't do that. But there was an instance, though. This is actually the perfect example of what my mom placed values on. Bless her heart. That's a Southern expression, that. In high school, I lied to her and told her I was going to spring break in Panama City, unaccompanied by adults, with friends of mine. This was what I told her. Hey, I'm going to spring break with Jeff and Paul for the weekend to Panama City. I was 18 or 19, could have been 17. I was in high school, so I might have been 17. But what I really did was went to Atlanta to see a Slayer concert. And to her, it was more acceptable for me to go to spring break unaccompanied than it was to go see a Slayer concert.
That's awesome. And I wouldn't have been able to get away with either. But the funny thing with my family is that when I hit 18, there was this switch. It was psh, you're on your own. You can do whatever you want. We just went from throttling the shit out of you to hey, go for it. Do whatever you want to do. Drink, go to town. So that blew my mind. But
yeah.
That's so fascinating that here you could go to this island vacation or a Slayer concert, and where are you really going to get in more trouble?
Right.
So kind of to that point, and a final question here for you. If your 42-year-old self could go back and meet your 17 or 18-year-old self, what would you say to yourself?
One thing, and I would say this not only to my younger self, but anyone out there that's young, if you feel like you need to go to college or get a education, higher education, if you're artistic or if you're into like this whole kind of world that probably you and I both live in, like, skateboarding, snowboarding, that kind of thing, one of the best things to do is one profession that gives you so much freedom is like a marketing profession, because you can basically, like, if you have the tools to where you can do marketing, you can pick where you want to work. Like you can go marketing for a snowboard company or a skateboard company, and you can still be entrenched in everything you like, and you can basically hype up brands and people you like. You know what I mean? And I
That's
would,
sorry, I was
yeah,
just going to jump in and say that's fascinating advice, because as you're saying that, I'm picturing the hundreds of marketing people that I've met and known over the years, and they're some of the happiest people that I know.
yeah, because like you can, like, when you get out of college, you'll probably get some shitty job. If you go into graphic design, you'll probably get some shitty job like designing the sales papers for your local grocery store, or you'll do the most inane bullshit, but over time you can work your way into really picking and choosing where you work and doing some amazing stuff, whether that be with music or skateboarding or snowboarding or whatever you're into. If you're into sports, maybe it's, with the football, team or whatever. But it's definitely like it's the bartending of like degrees, you know?
That is the best quote. I love it. So
Yeah.
where should people find you on the internet?
Well, ironically enough, marketing is also one of those things that it's also one of those professions. Like, if you're good at it, you don't have to have a degree at it. Just like art, you don't necessarily have to go to art school to be an amazing artist. And marketing's that way too. And it's just something that over time I've grown into understanding or realizing that I have this understanding of that. And part of that is branding. And that's one thing, like, I'm Burritos and Snow on everything. Even my Facebook, my name is Daniel Cochrane, but my Facebook is Daniel Burritos and Snow Cochrane. My Instagram, Burritos and Snow. My Twitter, Burritos and Snow. I just, burritosandsnow.net, N-E-T, for my website. I just kind of, for some reason, that clicked with me that I understood that I needed that same name across all these platforms. I don't have any kind of official marketing degree, but that made sense
No,
to
it's
me.
a consistent presence, and you
Right.
can really fuck with your own head and if you try to do split personalities. It can be done. There's people out there that have successful 3 and 4 Twitter accounts, and all of them have great amounts of followers and multiple Instagram accounts and multiple Facebook identities, and maybe even for completely different businesses. But you're going to have an identity crisis personally.
Right.
You're not going to know who you are, or you're going to talk to somebody in person and not know what they know you for, as opposed to just everything coming through one social media funnel.
Right. Right. And I mean, and I think it's just social media is a weird thing, but I choose to portray like who I am as on social media and as a total thing. There's some things you don't see my children on my social media very much because I let them have their own lives. You'll see them from time to time, but as a whole, my social media, my Burritos and Snow Instagram is pretty much divided up among, um, concert photos, snowboarding, and pictures of my dog. you know, so
You need to get some burrito photos up there, some cliche Instagram food photos.
yeah, here and there, here and there. When I go out of town for a while, I always hit up the Hector's burrito spot. That's my jam right there. So usually when I, go visit my friends in New York or wherever, first night back, I always hit up Hector's, and that's my I'm back in Salt Lake post. Is always Hector's for sure.
So it's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all burritos and snow. Did I see somewhere that you have a Pinterest account too? Is that even how you say that?
Yeah, I do. I don't. I make no bones about it. I rarely get on it. Kind of don't understand it. I do, but I don't. It's not my favorite thing, so I don't put a lot of effort into it. It's there, but you'll get the most interaction out of, actually most interaction out of Instagram. So that's where I'm on most of the time.
So I talked to a lot of other entrepreneurs and different folks, and it seems like that's obviously one of the biggest social media for women for whatever reason. And there's one person who's kind of in my circle that's done a ton of marketing, and she runs a whole successful business, and that's her whole communication channel. That's where she's getting her leads from. That's where she's getting her business from. It's just that one social network, and I don't know anything about it. I saw it somewhere on one of your profiles at some point, maybe on your website, and I just thought, oh, that's different. Usually, we don't see that.
It's there. It's not. Yeah, I wouldn't concentrate on it. I certainly don't.
It's kind of like Google Plus. Are you on there?
I have one. I don't really mess with it.
Yeah, it was going to be the biggest Facebook killer, but if you go on there, there's like a what are those things in the Old West that are like dust
tumbleweeds
rolling by? Yeah, that's what it's like.
As someone who is kind of interested in social media and doing stuff like that, I do. When new things come out, I always, especially having a brand or a name like Burritos and Snow, I do always sign up for stuff immediately, to kind of protect myself, and get my name on there. Whether I utilize it or not is beside the point. I'll kind of mess around with it. And then if it takes off, I'm there. And if it doesn't, it can just go by the wayside. That's okay.
Yeah, and you're not stuck with Burritos and Snow 69.
Right, exactly. And I probably, not that it's that big a deal, but I probably should do something legally to protect that at some point to give myself a little muscle if I need it.
That's a whole nother rabbit hole that we could go down. And I'm fighting with the USPTO right now over the trademark for Shred Souls. And I shouldn't even say that I'm fighting with them, but I registered it and had successful 5 or 6 years or however long. And then when I redid the paperwork, I changed from being an independent person submitting it to being a corporation submitting it. And that's gonna screw me out of like $600.
Yeah, and that's why Burritos and Snow now, the second incarnation, is a .net and not a .com. And that was my original website that I did, or not even website, that gives it too much credit. The blog I did was burritosandsnow.com, and then WordPress was supposed to automatically renew that, and they renewed my WordPress account or whatever, but for whatever reason they didn't renew the .com, and it had, it received traffic, so it had a nominal amount of value, and one of those offshore placeholder places snatched it up before I realized it. I didn't realize that it was expired and free to be bought. And it was actually the guys at Illicit. I don't know if you know that blog from England, who is by far one of my favorite snow blogs. If you don't know Illicit, you should check it out. They're hilarious, pretty snarky, and I love their design aesthetic, and I love almost everything they do is just amazing. But one of those guys messaged me one day, and he's like, "Hey, your site's all in Japanese or Chinese or whatever." I went over and I was like, "Oh shit," So I got in touch with WordPress, and by that point it was too late. And those people that do that kind of stuff, basically they want you to buy your website back from them.
Right.
And I was like, I don't give a shit. I'm not paying for it. Joke's on you, buddy. .net, here it comes.
Did they put a number out there?
No, never even. And I what I did was I kind of waited them out. I could go on Who Is, and see when their rights to it expired. And so I just kind of waited them out, and then the night that it expired, they automatically renewed. And because I was just going to buy it back, and they automatically renewed. And at that point, I was just like, okay, well, I was ready to launch my revamped site, and I just made it a .net. And it doesn't, I like to do stuff on my site. I like to do, I would like it to get as much promotion as it could, but at the same time, I like to experiment with it. So sometimes I'll put a lot of content up, and then I'll go 10 days without doing a thing to it, so I can watch the analytics You know what I mean?
Right.
So it doesn't bother me that it's a .net versus a .com. I'd prefer a .com, but I don't, it doesn't, like, I'm not like, oh no, my hits, that doesn't bother me.
You should get them to throw a number out there, just kind of see where they're at. And worst case scenario, we could rally up some kind of Kickstarter thing or something.
Yeah, at this point, I'm just stubborn in that, and I'm like, I don't even want it. Like, I'm not even going to play their game.
Yeah,
like,
you feel like they win if you hand over anything. It does.
Right.
I mean, they've wanted a shitty game. That shouldn't even be a thing.
Yeah, and I don't care.
Right.
I don't care.
I understand.
So.
Well, brother, I thank you. It's been a pleasure. I think that we could talk forever. It's so funny. It's kind of an ongoing theme on the podcast where I get to talk with my internet friends.
Yeah. I like to call it the pretender net.
Exactly.
People you don't know in real life, but you've had multiple conversations with on the internet. The pretender net.
Yeah, I know Daniel. I like all his posts.
Yeah, exactly. couldn't pick him out in a crowd. But yeah.
Well, thanks, brother. I think that's a good spot to wrap it up. Do you feel complete?
Never complete, but that's okay.
Okay. As they say in yoga, namaste.
Yeah, namaste to you. All that hippie shit.
So, in the spirit of Daniel's love for music, we're going to have the original snowboard rapper, Sean Farmer, take us out. But before that, I want to give something away. Daniel's story about the squatter on his website, burritosandsnow.com, reminded me of all the domains that I've purchased over the years and never done anything with. One of which is skiingsucks.com. I bought this 4 or 5 years ago, and I thought it would make for a great website that I could use to poke fun at skiers. I think I envisioned a blog with just a bunch of goofy pictures of skiers. But I've had this domain for years, and I've really done nothing with it. I want to give it away to someone that'll use it. So shoot me an email titled Skiing Sucks to nate@shredsouls.com. In that email, describe to me what you'd like to create with that domain, and point me to another website or other work on the internet that you've already created so I can kind of see your handiwork. I'll decide who gets the domain skiingsucks.com based on whoever can make me laugh the most. So in honor of Daniel's love for music, I can't believe that he'd pick music over snowboarding, but to each his own. Here's Sean Farmer rapping about snowboarding from Fall Line Films' 1991 video,
from a gas
Critical
station
Condition.
outside Salt Lake City. He said this movie needed him. He said he was the best. He wanted a plane ticket. We said ride the dog and sent him a bus ticket. That's when we told him the Fall Line motto. Put up or shut up. He got the message.
This is the greatest fucking rhyme of all time. Drill a hole in your head and pour it into your mind. Inject it into your brain. I'm talking mainline, cause I can lock in on a topic just like a Smith grind. Check into a Motel 6 and kick the walls out. When I'm raging on my stick, I'm going balls out. Ignore about people much too long. Maybe that's why I wrote this song. Man, I'm tired of playing the underdog. Finally, the media's eyes open up. Dinosaurs by the roadside, broken up, dreaming and crying for their glory days. Still lost in one of my sprays. Man of the future, or man of the past. Fact of the matter is now's here to last. Cause I ain't going away. Sooner or later, somebody's gonna have to pay. Cause I'll be so damn big, they can't get out of my way. We do it my way, this is my resume. We do it my way, what did I say? We do it my way, this is my resume. We do it my way, what did I say? People of the industry would like to dismiss me just because I don't grumble like a lot of you sissies that see me kissing butt. What? You can get me product? That's cool, I guess. That way I can go and trade the product for sex. I need money to live. You got a head like a sieve. What's the problem? You got shit in your ears? You gotta be blind not to see. On the line's extreme, nobody's sicker than me. I can take it no more. We calls are getting over. I say weed them out like a patch of clover. They think the bag is taking air above the lip. Next thing I know, they're also kind of ego trip. Don't get me wrong, I love air in the pipe. But when I do it, that means you're risking my life. Getting back to the subject from which I'm digressing. I'm tired of you puppets and all your BSing. Put your money where your mouth is and start fessing right in front of your friends. I'm gonna teach you a lesson to what you tile-wearing fools got to say to me. Shut the hell up and make the check pay to me. Tell me what's the integrity. One day you'll be begging me, but by then it will be much too late. Cause everything in my world will be custom handmade. You have to see my proposal, man, you can see it today. We do it my way, this is my resume. We do it my way, what did I say? We do it my way, this is my resume. We do it my way, what did I say? Getting raw at squaw, feeling 10 feet tall, just having a a ball and here to tell you all about one of the baddest. The man who has attained ambassadorial status. Call him Nicolada, call him Parada, call him Donovan Now. I'd have to say nada, he's my equal, I'm a pro bra, lethal as a cobra. Ollie off the trail with the pop and crack the sign. Now the whole damn crowd of people's nicks and mine. 50 for air, pointing tough cause I want more. Boink and poke and spin and then I stick it like it's never been stuck before. Uh-oh, ski patrol, standing right in our path. I look at Nick, ha, we just laugh. The faces turn red as we blast overhead. Nick styles a backflip, I throw it front. We both stick it, it's a routine stunt. Pointing straight now and we're running our fastest. Patrol's trying but they can't get their asses. Besides we can't let them, we don't even got passes. Right across the parking lot, get into this chick's car. She wants to do what she knows cause we're stars. Back at the pad, we work her over and then slap a high five and trade ends. There's nothing like doing a hoe with your friend. It ain't if we win, we lose, or we play. It's how many rules can we break? I can say more, but what more can I say? We do it my way, this is my resume. We do it my way, what did I say? We do it my way, this is my resume. We do it my way, what did I say?
We want the world and we want
Sean Farmer put up, so we shut up. And we gave him a job.
Farmers motherfucking way.
Thank you for listening to the Not Snowboarding podcast. To hear more episodes, go to www.notsnowboardingpodcast.com.